Why was no one listening to her? Private First Class Emma Sullivan sat in her Humvee, the engine still warm from the morning patrol, the dust of Helmand province clinging to her boots. From the outside she was invisible, just the driver. That's all they ever called her. Just a driver. A pair of hands on the wheel, a shadow behind the windshield, a transport nobody noticed until they needed her. But the radio didn't lie. A burst of static ripped through the quiet of forward operating base Cougar, then a panicked voice, sharp and breathless, fighting through the chaos. Eagle Squadron taking heavy fire. Coordinates Echo 7. Immediate support, we're pinned down, repeat, we're surrounded. Emma froze, her knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. She knew that voice. Lieutenant Reeves, Delta Force. A man who had brushed past her 100 times without ever remembering her name. And now he was calling for help, desperate, cornered, his men dying in a valley she had studied night after night on stolen maps no one thought she cared about. Another burst of gunfire screamed through the speaker, then silence. In the command center, officers scrambled like chess pieces, voices overlapping in confusion. The quick reaction force would take time to mobilize. Too much time. Emma could see it already, the map, the terrain, the narrow choke point between the ridges. She traced it with her finger under the dim light of her bunk lamp when everyone else was laughing in the rec room. She knew where Reeves's men were. She knew what was happening. And she knew no one was going to reach them in time. Her chest tightened. She saw faces in her mind, soldiers she'd driven across base, grumbling about her music, tossing dismissive jokes over their shoulders as if she were invisible. Men who'd laughed when her Special Forces applications mysteriously disappeared 4 times in a row. Too small, too female, too much risk, just a driver. Another voice cut in over the radio, urgent breaking. 30 hostiles, RPGs, heavy weapons, we can't, the transmission cut. Emma swallowed hard, staring through her windshield at the smoke rising in the distance. She could hear her father's voice, years ago, deep in the Montana woods. Breathing controls everything. Inhale halfway, hold, squeeze. Never rush. Never show them what you're afraid of. She remembered the buck that had dropped clean with one shot. She remembered her father's rough hand ruffling her hair just once in pride. And she remembered his words as they skinned the deer. They'll underestimate you, Emma, because of your size, because you're a girl. That will be your advantage if you let it. Her father had been right. They underestimated her here, too. They had locked her behind the wheel and thrown away the key. But Eagle Squadron was dying. Emma opened the Humvee door and stepped out, her boots hitting the dirt with quiet resolve. The world around her felt distant, blurred, like she was already halfway gone. She knew what she had to do, even before her mind caught up to the decision. Her feet carried her to the armory. The sergeant behind the counter looked up in surprise as she pushed through the door. "Sullivan, what the hell are you doing here?" His voice was gravel, his eyes weary. William Harrison, old soldier, Desert Storm veteran. He'd seen too much, lost too much. "Eagle Squadron's being slaughtered," Emma said flatly, her voice steady though her pulse hammered. "I need the M249. Harrison blinked. "The SAW, you're a driver not authorized for." "There's no time." Her voice cracked like a whip. "Our people are dying. Give me the weapon or I'll take it." Something in her eyes made him pause. He studied her the way only warriors do, looking for the truth beneath the uniform. And he saw it. Not desperation, not panic. Something forged long before this day. "You ever fire one?" Level 1 qualified. 5,000 rounds on the range. Silence stretched heavy. Then, without another word, Harrison unlocked the rack and pulled down the saw. As he handed it to her, his voice softened, almost reverent. "I've watched you, Sullivan, studying maps alone, running the obstacle course before dawn. You weren't just a driver, were you?" "Never was, Sergeant." She checked the weapon with practiced efficiency. Just needed someone to notice. Harrison's jaw tightened. He disappeared into the back, returning with a case. Inside lay an M24 sniper rifle, thermal optics mounted, and a frequency scanner. Take these, too. Taliban comms have patterns. This will help you find their command. Emma froze. This isn't standard issue. Neither are you. Harrison's eyes burned with memory. I was a sniper once. 78 confirmed. I know the look when I see it. Your applications weren't rejected because you weren't good enough. They were blocked by Colonel Wilson. He's protecting his ghosts. Prove him wrong, Sullivan. Bring our boys home. Her hands closed around the weapons. Heavy, cold, real. For the first time in 9 months, she felt alive. By the time she reached her vehicle again, the decision was sealed. She wasn't waiting for orders. She wasn't waiting for permission. The base gates loomed ahead, a lone guard stepping forward in confusion. Sullivan, you can't leave. You need orders. Emma leaned out the window, the Humvee rumbling beneath her. Eagle Squadron is dying. Move or get run over. The guard saw it in her face, the kind of resolve that couldn't be ordered or broken. He lifted the barrier without another word. The Humvee roared forward, chewing up dirt and stone as the road twisted toward the smoke in the valley. 8 kilometers of rough terrain. 8 kilometers between her and 30 armed hostiles. 8 kilometers between life and death for Eagle Squadron. Emma's hands were steady on the wheel, her mind clear. She had never been in combat, never fired a weapon at someone firing back. But she'd been preparing for this moment all her life, even if no one else believed it. As the Humvee crested the ridge, the valley spread before her like a nightmare she'd already seen. The kill zone was perfect, too perfect. Disabled Humvees smoldered, one burning, one riddled with holes. Soldiers pinned behind wreckage, firing sporadically, hopelessly outnumbered. Enemy fire rained down from the rocks. Emma braked hard, skidding into high ground above the valley. She grabbed the M249, the heavy belt-fed machine gun weighing on her shoulders, and dropped behind the engine block of her Humvee, the most armored part of the vehicle. Her father's voice whispered again. When you're outgunned, surprise and aggression, hit them hard, hit them fast, don't stop until it's over. Emma set the bipod on the hood, fed the belt, and chambered the first round. She inhaled, halfway held. Then squeezed. The valley erupted with the roar of automatic fire, tracer rounds streaking like fireflies in the smoke. Her first target crumpled, then another, then another. The rhythm consumed her, 5 to 7 rounds, shift fire, conserve ammo, controlled, precise, merciless. The enemy spun in confusion, caught off guard by the flanking fire. Bullets rattled against her Humvee, spiderwebbing the glass but not breaking through. She stayed calm, her breathing steady, her father's lessons guiding her hands. Over the radio, shocked voices broke through. Who the hell is that, Thompson? Is that Sullivan, the driver, Reeves? She didn't answer, she didn't need to. Her job was clear: hold, suppress, buy them time to live. As Eagle Squadron rallied, advancing under her cover fire, Emma reloaded, sweat stinging her eyes, bullets kicking dirt inches from her face. The barrel glowed with heat, smoke rising, but it held. So did she. And in that moment, she wasn't just a driver anymore. She was the reason 12 men were still alive. Who would believe it, 30 against 1? The battlefield was chaos, but Emma Sullivan felt a strange clarity in the storm. Smoke curled upward, screams echoed, tracer fire cut across the valley. She was pinned behind her Humvee, the M249 growling in her hands, and yet her heart had steadied into a rhythm. Each burst, each reload, each kill. Enemy fighters scrambled like startled animals. They had expected an easy slaughter of a cornered American patrol. They hadn't expected her. Fall back, regroup, voices shouted in the native tongue. Emma saw them peel away, 5 fighters breaking off toward a ridge on the far side, dragging weapons into cover. Her eyes narrowed. If they regrouped there, Eagle Squadron wouldn't survive the next push. Lieutenant Reeves's voice crackled over the net. Sullivan, pull back, you're too exposed. She didn't answer. Words cost time, and time was blood. Emma unhooked the saw, slung it across her back, and left the protection of the Humvee. The open ground between her and the regrouping enemy seemed endless, bullets snapping past her ears, the dirt spitting up around her boots. Her Montana upbringing guided her steps, moving from rock to rock, crouched low, steady breath, like stalking elk, like she'd done with her father before sunrise, when the snow crunched underfoot and silence was survival. The fighters turned just as she closed within 30 meters. Their faces registered shock. A lone figure, small, almost slight, advancing straight at them with a machine gun too big for her frame. They raised their rifles. She raised the saw. The burst ripped through the air, deafening. 1, 2, 3 cut down in seconds. The fourth tried to flee. She didn't let him. The fifth squeezed a wild burst, hitting nothing. She dropped him with precision fire. Then silence. Just the ringing in her ears, the barrel smoking, the smell of cordite and blood. 5 lives erased in less than 10 seconds. For a moment she stood there, chest heaving, heart pounding against her ribs. The reality seeped in. These weren't targets on a range. These were men, human beings, and they weren't getting up. But she had no time to linger. Movement below caught her eye. Eagle Squadron rallying under her cover. Sergeant Thompson limped forward, firing controlled bursts. Reeves barked orders, his voice raw but steady. They were alive, because of her. Emma dropped to a knee, scanning the ridgeline. Her scanner pulsed faintly, picking up frequency chatter. She adjusted it, listening to the broken cadence of Taliban comms. One signal stood out, focused, sharp, issuing commands in calm tones. The commander. The ghost. Her chest tightened. She'd heard about him. An ex-military phantom, trained in Soviet conflicts, maybe by Americans themselves. A man who had turned his training against them. The mastermind behind the ambushes she had predicted on her maps. The predator she'd warned Wilson about, the same warning he had ignored. And now he was here. Emma jogged back to her Humvee, adrenaline pushing her past the ache in her muscles. She dropped the saw, pulled the M24 sniper rifle from its case, and began moving up the ridge line. Each step hurt, each breath burned, but her father's voice steadied her. Control your body, control your shot. The world will always try to shake you, don't let it. She found her position at a rocky outcrop, set the bipod, and scanned through the thermal scope. The world lit up in shades of heat. There, 3 figures in a cave, 2 guards, one central moving with calm authority, gesturing, commanding. The ghost. Emma adjusted for wind, elevation, temperature. 1,000 meters, beyond what she'd ever done in combat or what anyone expected she could. She slowed her breathing. Inhale halfway, hold. The ghost stepped into the open, tall, bearded, with the bearing of a professional soldier. A man who believed he couldn't be touched. Emma squeezed. The shot cracked across the valley. The ghost staggered, clutched his chest, and fell. Panic erupted among the guards. Emma chambered another round, fired. One guard dropped, the other dove for cover. She fired again. He collapsed in the cave's mouth. 3 shots, 3 kills, 1,000 meters. Her hands shook as she exhaled, the weight of what she'd done pressing in. She had ended him, the ghost, the specter that had haunted every ambush. She had done it, her, the driver no one had trusted. But victory was never clean. The crack of an AK split the air. Pain tore through her shoulder, white-hot, knocking her onto her back. Breath ripped from her lungs. She rolled, gasping, vision blurring. A lone fighter had circled behind, weapon raised for the killing blow. Emma's hand found her sidearm. She drew, fired 3 rapid shots. Center mass. The fighter fell. Silence, except her own ragged breathing, the pulse of pain radiating from her wound. She pressed a field dressing against it, teeth clenched, refusing to give in. Not yet, not until the mission was done. She staggered down the ridge, each step agony, blood soaking her sleeve. By the time she reached the valley, American medics were already at work, triaging the wounded. Thompson lay pale on a stretcher, his leg heavily bandaged. His eyes widened when he saw her. "What the hell did you do, Sullivan?" His voice was weak, disbelieving. Emma knelt beside him, fighting to stay conscious. "My job, Sergeant, same as you." His gaze shifted to the ridge line, back to her, understanding dawning. You killed their command, the Ghost." 3 shots, 1,000 meters. Her voice was faint but certain. "It's done." Lieutenant Reeves appeared, sweat streaking his dirt-stained face. He stopped cold when he saw her, bloodied, rifle in hand. His voice softened, reverent, almost guilty. "Jesus Christ, Sullivan, you saved us all." Emma looked him in the eye. "Because that's what soldiers do. We bring everyone home." Her vision dimmed, slipping into black as medics lifted her onto a stretcher. She felt weightless, floating, the pain receding. For the first time, she believed it herself. She wasn't just a driver anymore. Why did she wake up to silence instead of gunfire? Emma's eyes fluttered open, the world blurred by medication and the sterile light of a field hospital. The hum of machines, the faint beep of monitors, the rustle of nurses moving past, it felt unreal, like she'd slipped from one world into another. Her left shoulder burned, bandaged thick, tethered to IV lines. She tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. The battle replayed in her head, the valley, the saw, the ridge, the Ghost falling. It hadn't been a dream, it had happened. She had survived, barely. "Private First Class Sullivan," a voice said, steady, formal, carrying weight. Emma turned her head. Colonel Frank Wilson sat beside her bed, hands clasped, face grave. The man who had dismissed her analysis. The man who had called her just a driver. The man who had blocked her applications, all 4 of them. "How are you feeling?" His voice softened, but his eyes didn't. Emma's reply was automatic. "Ready for duty, sir." Wilson almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Not quite yet, I think." He leaned back, studying her, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle he'd never wanted to look at. "You violated multiple regulations yesterday. You took weapons without authorization. You left base without orders. You engaged the enemy without command approval." "Yes, sir." Her voice was flat, no apology. He leaned forward, voice shifting. "You also saved 12 American soldiers, neutralized a superior enemy force, eliminated a high-value target that's evaded us for months. Sergeant Thompson says you pulled him out alive. Lieutenant Reeves credits you with turning the battle, and his words caught, "I owe you an apology." Emma stayed silent. She wanted to hear it, all of it. Wilson exhaled slowly, his face etched with something deeper than command. 2 years ago, my daughter was killed in Iraq, infantry officer. Brilliant, brave, everything a soldier should be. She insisted on deployment. She died in Fallujah. She was 23. The weight in his voice sank into Emma's chest. A daughter, a father broken by grief, a man who had decided to protect others by holding them back. "I couldn't sign another set of orders for women to go into combat," Wilson admitted. His voice cracked for the first time. "I couldn't write another letter to parents like me, so I blocked every application, yours included. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. It was weakness." Emma's jaw clenched. Her voice was quiet but firm. "With respect, sir, that wasn't your decision to make." "No," Wilson said. "It was, and you proved that yesterday. You proved me wrong." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box, and set it on the blanket beside her. Inside gleamed silver sergeant stripes and a silver star. Emma stared, her throat tightening. 9 months of invisibility, 9 months of being just a driver, and now this, a recognition she'd never thought she would see, a medal that felt heavier than the wound in her shoulder. "You're being promoted," Wilson said quietly. "Effective immediately. Sergeant Sullivan and the Rangers want you. So does every special operations unit in theater. You've earned your place. No one can deny it now." Her breath caught. Rangers. The word echoed in her head. the impossible door now open. Wilson studied her a long moment, then asked softly, "Your father was John Sullivan, wasn't he? Rangers, then Special Forces, Gulf War." Emma blinked. "You knew him." Wilson nodded slowly. "He saved my life in Basra, 1991. Finest soldier I ever served with." His gaze softened, distant with memory. "I should have made the connection when I saw your file. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." A nurse appeared, reminding Wilson of Emma's need for rest. He stood, his boots heavy against the floor, then paused at the door. "This is no longer just a man's army, Sergeant Sullivan. Gender doesn't matter when you've already proven yourself a warrior." And then he was gone. The room seemed quieter without him, though Emma could still hear his words echoing. Hero, Ranger, Silver Star. Words that had once felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone bigger, stronger, not to her. A figure entered quietly, breaking her thoughts. Sergeant Harrison, the old sniper who had armed her when no one else would. His weathered face softened as he sat beside her. For once, emotion showed in his eyes. 32 confirmed kills," he said softly, shaking his head. "Including the ghost, at nearly 1,000 meters. Not bad for just a driver." Emma shifted, her shoulder flaring. "I had a good teacher." "No," Harrison corrected. "You had instinct, can't teach that." He placed something small and brass on her blanket, a sniper qualification badge. "This is yours now, more than earned." Emma picked it up, turning it in her hand, the metal warm against her palm. A symbol, a truth. "What happens next?" she asked quietly. Harrison's gaze drifted to the window, where the Afghan mountains stretched endless and silent. "Ranger assessment, then Delta if you want it. Every door is open now." Her voice wavered. "Because I killed people." The weight of it pressed down on her chest. The blood on her hands felt heavier than the metal by her side. Harrison's voice was firm. "No, because you saved people. Because when everyone else froze, you acted. That's what separates soldiers from warriors." He stood, straightened his uniform, and looked down at her with something close to pride. "Rest, Sullivan. The real war is just starting for you." Emma frowned. "What real war?" "The one where they see you coming," Harrison said. "The one where they know exactly what you're capable of, and fight you anyway. That's the hardest war of all." He left her with that thought, the words echoing long after the door closed. Emma lay back, the sniper badge clutched in her hand. The weight of her choices pressed down. 32 dead, the ghost gone, her own blood soaking the soil. She thought of Thompson's pale face, whispering disbelief. "What the hell did you do, Sullivan?" She thought of Reeves's stunned voice, "You saved us all." She thought of her father's lessons, the deer in the snow, the words that had carried her across every dismissal and every rejection. Being underestimated is your advantage. But now she wasn't underestimated anymore. The element of surprise was gone. And with it came something heavier, responsibility. She wasn't just a driver, not anymore. Why did they all stare when she stepped off the bus? The training compound at Fort Benning stretched out under a blistering Georgia sun, the air thick with humidity and the weight of history. Generations of Rangers had been forged here, broken here, rebuilt here. And now Emma Sullivan walked among them, her duffel slung over her good shoulder, the fresh sergeant stripe stitched on her sleeve still too new to feel real. Around her, candidates gathered, men hardened by years of service, special operations hopefuls from every corner of the army. Their eyes flicked toward her, then away. Some lingered, some narrowed, a few smirked. She knew what they saw, a woman, 5'7", lean, still healing from a shoulder wound. A name whispered in news clippings about the ambush in Helmand. The driver who had killed the ghost. A legend too young, too raw, too untested. "Which one, Sullivan?" someone muttered behind her. "That's her, the girl, the sniper. She doesn't belong here, just a story." Emma ignored them, her boots steady on the gravel, but inside her chest tightened. She thought the silver star, the promotion, the whispered reverence would mean acceptance. It hadn't. Not here. Here, legends didn't matter. Only sweat, pain, and survival did. A voice boomed across the courtyard. Candidates. The ranger instructors appeared like wolves, squared shoulders, caps pulled low, eyes sharp. One of them, Staff Sergeant Rains, stepped forward. His presence silenced everything. Welcome to RASP. Some of you think you're ready. Most of you aren't. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to find out who breaks, who bends, and who bleeds Ranger. If you make it through, you'll earn a place in the 75th. If you don't, well, the bus that dropped you off will take you home. His eyes swept the formation, landing on Emma. A pause, a flicker of something unreadable. Then he barked, ground now, push-up position. Dozens of bodies hit the dirt. Emma with them, her palms grinding into gravel. The instructors circled like hawks, counting slow, punishing reps. Sweat ran into her eyes, her shoulder burned, her lungs clawed for air. 50, 60, 70. Her arms shook, the old wound screaming with every extension. A voice sneered above her. What's the matter, Sullivan? Thought you were a hero. Heroes can't do push-ups. She gritted her teeth, locked her elbows, forced another rep, and another. Pain became rhythm. Rhythm became defiance. By 90, bodies collapsed around her. By 100, even the strongest men faltered. Emma held the position until the command came. On your feet. Her arms trembled, her chest heaved, but she stood, eyes forward, steady. Rains watched her with a look that was neither approval nor scorn, just calculation. The days blurred into trials, forced marches with rucks heavy enough to break spines, obstacle courses designed to strip away pride, land navigation in swamps that swallowed boots and tested sanity, sleep deprivation that turned nights into a haze of hallucinations. Emma carried her weight, every pound of it, every mile. Her body screamed, but her mind whispered her father's lessons. Control the breath, one step at a time. Pain is just information. It doesn't get to decide for you. The other candidates watched her with wary eyes. Some muttered doubts. Some tried to trip her up, small cruelties, subtle sabotage. Once a man accidentally loosened the straps on her ruck before a 12-mile march. She noticed. She tightened them. She finished the march ahead of him. Still, the whispers followed. She's only here because of that story. Silver Star doesn't mean Ranger. She won't last. Late one night, after a brutal day of navigation and water crossings, Emma sat alone, her uniform caked in mud, her body shivering with exhaustion. Her hands trembled as she cleaned her rifle. A shadow fell across her. Rains. You think you're fooling anyone. His voice was low, edged with something sharper than contempt. Emma looked up, meeting his gaze. I don't know what you mean, Sergeant. You're hurt, that shoulder, not healed. You're running on painkillers and stubbornness, and the others know it. They're waiting for you to break. Her jaw tightened. I won't break. Rains crouched, his eyes drilling into hers. You already broke once. Out there in Helmand, don't deny it, I read the report. 32 kills, 1,000-meter shots saved a squad. And then what? You passed out in the dirt. That's breaking. Emma's chest rose, fell. The memory burned. The moment her vision went black, the helpless surrender of her body. Rains's voice softened unexpectedly. But here's the difference. Breaking isn't failure. Failure is staying broken. You think you're the only one who's hit the wall. Every Ranger worth the scroll has. The question is, what do you do after? He stood towering over her. Prove it to me, to them, to yourself, or the bus is waiting. He left her with the words, and Emma stared at her rifle until dawn. She thought of the valley, of the men she'd saved, of Wilson's apology, of Harrison's pride. And she thought of the faces she had taken, the ghost, his guards, the men on the ridge, all of them weighing against the lives she had preserved. The next day the trials grew harsher. Buddy carries up hills, dragging full-grown men across the dirt. Endless rope climbs that tore skin from palms. timed runs under the merciless Georgia sun. Emma's body screamed, but her will sharpened. Every step forward was defiance. Every completed task was a promise to herself. She would not go back to being invisible. She would not be just a driver again. During one brutal march, Thompson's voice echoed in her mind. "What the hell did you do, Sullivan?" She whispered the answer to herself under her breath as her boots pounded the dirt. "My job, same as you." One night during a rare hour of rest, another candidate approached her. Private Jensen, broad-shouldered, cocky, one of the loudest skeptics from the first day. He dropped onto the dirt beside her, silent for a moment. Then, without looking at her, he muttered, "You carried me today on that hill. I was gonna quit. You didn't let me." Emma turned her head, studying him. His jaw was tight, his pride raw. "You don't belong here any less than the rest of us," Jensen said finally. "Don't mean I like it, but I respect it." He walked away before she could reply. Something shifted after that. Not everyone accepted her. Not everyone would. But cracks appeared in the wall of doubt. Respect, small, grudging, fragile, began to grow. By the end of the 6th week, numbers had thinned. Men dropped from exhaustion, injury, failure. Emma remained. Barely standing some days, but standing nonetheless. On the final ruck march, a gutting 20-mile grind, Emma stumbled near the finish, her legs trembling, her vision blurring. She tasted blood in her mouth, felt the old wound tearing anew. Voices urged her to stop, to drop, to quit. But beneath it all, another voice carried her forward, her father's. "They'll underestimate you, Emma. That's your advantage. Don't let them be right." She staggered across the finish line, collapsed, the world spun. And then she heard it, the words she had chased through pain, doubt, and blood. "Congratulations. You passed RASP. Welcome to the 75th Ranger Regiment." She opened her eyes to see Rains standing over her. For the first time, his expression softened into something like pride. "You didn't just survive, Sullivan," he said quietly. "You belonged." The words settled into her chest, deeper than medals or stripes. Belonging, earned, paid for in sweat and pain. She wasn't just a driver. She wasn't just a story. She was a ranger. Why did it feel heavier when they finally trusted her? The C-130 rumbled through the night, engines screaming against the Afghan sky. Inside, rangers sat strapped into red webbing seats, faces shadowed under helmets and goggles, rifles across their laps. They were silent, each lost in their own thoughts, except for Emma. She could feel every eye, every glance flicking toward her like a test. This was her first mission as one of them. Not a driver, not a support, a ranger. Her kit weighed on her shoulders, the M4 carbine across her chest, the M24 sniper rifle strapped to her pack. Sweat prickled under her uniform, though the plane's interior was cold. It wasn't the gear or the altitude. It was the pressure. She remembered Harrison's words. "The real war is the one where they see you coming." Now they did. Staff Sergeant Rains stood at the front, briefing in clipped tones over the roar. "Objective, compound at Grid 43 Alpha. High-value target believed on sight. Call sign Falcon. We insert North Ridge, move on foot 15 clicks. Fast, silent, no mistakes. You all know the drill." His eyes scanned the group, landing on Emma for just a beat longer than the rest. A test again. Always a test. The red light above the hatch clicked on. "Stand by." Rangers checked gear, tightened straps, chambered rounds. Emma followed the motions, her hands steady though her heart pounded. "Green light, go." The ramp opened to the rushing wind and black void. One by one, rangers leapt into the night. Emma's boots followed, her body swallowed by the roar of darkness, the parachute yanking her upright. The ground rushed up, hard, unforgiving. She landed, rolled, caught her breath. Around her, shadows gathered, rangers forming up. Silent hand signals. No words. The mission had begun. Hours blurred into footsteps. The ridge line cut against the starlit sky, the valley yawning black below. Emma moved in formation, her breathing controlled, every muscle tuned to silence. She thought of her father in Montana, teaching her to step soft in snow. Every crunch mattered, every sound carried. By dawn, the compound appeared, mud walls, narrow alleys, faint smoke rising. Birds scattered from rooftops. Rain signaled halt. The team crouched, weapons ready, eyes sharp. Intel said Falcon was inside. A Taliban financier, a man who paid for bombs with foreign money and blood. But Intel was often wrong. Emma knew that better than most. The team split two elements. Rains led one. Emma was with the sniper support team, overwatch from the ridge, her position, her advantage. She lay prone, rifle on bipod, scope scanning the compound. Through thermal, figures moved inside, heat signatures, shifting shapes. One taller, commanding in the central room, possibly Falcon. Her finger rested against the trigger guard, ready, waiting. The assault team moved. Breach charge, explosion, shouts in Pashto. Gunfire erupted, deafening even from her distance. Shadows scrambled, fighters pouring from alleys. Emma, breath steady, found her first target. A man with an RPG rushing toward the wall. She exhaled, squeezed. He dropped, chambered again. Another fighter on the roof, firing wildly. She cut him down. Her scope caught movement in the alley. A child no more than 12, running, terrified, no weapon, just fear. Emma shifted off target, heart twisting. She whispered to herself, "Not him, never him." Her crosshairs found another instead, an armed fighter stepping out behind the boy. One shot. Down. The child disappeared into the chaos, alive. Her comm crackled. Target Falcon confirmed, trying to escape east door. Emma's scope snapped to the door. The tall figure burst into the open, sprinting for cover. She tracked him, adjusted for distance, wind, breath in, hold. A sudden flash, movement beside him. A woman, wrapped in cloth, clutching a baby. Emma's chest seized. The shot hung on her finger, suspended in time. The child's face turned toward her scope, small, fragile, innocent. Her mind screamed. If she fired, she risked hitting them. If she didn't, Falcon would vanish. Breathe, Emma. Her father's voice, control everything, choose what matters. Her decision snapped into clarity. She shifted 2 inches, squeezed. The bullet ripped Falcon's leg. He collapsed, screaming, dragging himself across the dirt. The woman and child kept running, untouched, disappearing into the maze. Emma exhaled, chest shaking. She whispered almost to herself, target down, alive. The team surged, securing him. Shouts confirmed capture, mission complete. But Emma's body didn't feel triumph. It felt the tremor of that choice, the crosshairs on a child's face, the weight of restraint, the echo of what could have been. Hours later at Exfil, the team regrouped. Falcon, bound and bleeding, was loaded into a Blackhawk. Rangers sat in silence, exhaustion etched into every line of their faces. Rains moved through the cabin, stopping by Emma. His voice was low, just for her. "You had him in your sights. You could have ended him." Emma met his eyes. "There was a child. I don't shoot children." Rain studied her, unreadable. Then he gave the smallest nod. "Good, that's the difference. Anyone can kill. Rangers know when not to." He moved on, leaving her with the words. Emma leaned back against the cold metal wall, her rifle across her knees, her body trembling with the aftermath. The adrenaline faded, leaving only reflection. She thought of the woman and the baby disappearing into the alley. She thought of Falcon's scream, his blood pooling in the dust. She thought of her own breath, steady on the trigger, and the choice she had made. Not everything was about killing. Sometimes strength was knowing when not to. But she also knew this. Her choices would not always be clean. The line would blur again, and she would carry every shadow that came with it. The Blackhawk lifted, the compound shrinking below, the war stretching endless beyond. Emma closed her eyes. She was no longer invisible, no longer just a driver. But visibility carried its own weight. and she could already feel it pressing down. Why did survival feel lonelier than death? The base hummed with subdued celebration. Falcon had been captured, a financier of bombs and blood, a man who'd paid for dozens of American funerals, now shackled in a holding cell, alive but broken. Emma should have felt triumph, pride, relief. Instead, she sat alone on the barrack steps, the desert night pressing heavy around her. The stars above burned cold, silent witnesses to choices no one else had seen. Her hands still remembered the trigger, the child's face caught in her scope. She had saved a life, and spared another, but the question gnawed, had she doomed someone else because she let Falcon live? Footsteps crunched behind her. Reeves, clean uniform, tired eyes, a quiet weight in his presence. He lowered himself onto the step beside her, not speaking for a while, just breathing the same night air. Finally, he said, "Media's already spinning it. Hero Ranger Sergeant Sullivan spares civilian lives during daring raid. They'll plaster your face across every headline. You'll be the poster girl for restraint, for integrity. For the war no one understands back home." Emma's throat tightened. "That's not what happened." "No," Reeves said softly, "but they don't want what happened, they want a story." His words cut deep. She thought of her father, the Montana woods, the lessons about honesty and silence. What story would they twist him into if he had lived long enough for it? Reeves turned, studying her profile in the starlight. "Wilson asked me what I thought of you. I told him the truth. You're the best soldier I've served with, but—" His voice faltered. "Truth doesn't always matter in this game. Politics does." Emma looked at him, searching his face. "What game?" Reeves hesitated, then lowered his voice. "You ever wonder why every ambush you predicted came true? Why your maps were right? Why we were always one step behind?" Emma froze. The thought had haunted her. Patterns too sharp, coincidences too exact. Reeves's eyes hardened. "There's a mole, someone feeding intel, someone high enough to bury your applications, someone who didn't want you here." Her chest tightened. Colonel Wilson's face flashed in her mind, his confession of grief, his apology. Could it be him? Or was it someone else, someone still hiding behind clipped orders and polished medals? Emma's voice cracked. "Why tell me?" "Because you see things the rest of us don't," Reeves said simply. "Because you've already proven you won't look away, even when it breaks you." He stood, his shadow stretching long across the dirt. "Be careful, Sullivan. Saving people on the battlefield is one thing. Saving yourself off it, that's a war of its own." He left her there, alone with the stars and the weight of suspicion. The next morning, Wilson called her into his office. His voice was all brass and ceremony, but his eyes carried exhaustion. "You're headed home, Sergeant. Temporary rotation. Medal ceremony in D.C. Media wants you. Politicians want you. Army wants you to smile for cameras." Emma stared. "I don't want the spotlight, sir." "You don't get a choice," Wilson said, his voice flat. "None of us do. That's the price of survival in this machine." The words chilled her more than the desert nights. Back in the States, the contrast was jarring. Flashbulbs instead of gunfire, applause instead of silence, journalists asking questions she couldn't answer. How did it feel to kill 32 enemies? What was going through your mind when you spared the child? What does it mean to be the first woman ranger with a silver star? She smiled when expected, nodded when prompted. Inside, she felt hollow. At the ceremony, generals pinned the medal to her chest while politicians spoke of courage, integrity, history. Cameras captured every angle, her face projected across screens, headlines calling her a symbol of progress. But in the crowd, Emma's eyes caught something else. A figure in a dark suit watching too closely, not clapping, not smiling, just watching. Later, in the quiet of a hotel room, she checked her phone. A message had arrived from an unknown number. "They're not celebrating you. They're testing you. Watch your back." Her pulse quickened. She scanned the room, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow, every hum of the air conditioner. She thought of Reeves's warning. There's a mole. The next day she was ushered into a Pentagon briefing. The air smelled of polish and power. Around the table sat men in uniforms and suits, stars on shoulders, pins on lapels. Wilson was there. So was a general she'd never met, General Harrow, sharp-eyed, his smile too thin. "Sergeant Sullivan," Harrow said smoothly, "we want you to consult on future operations. Share your instincts, your gift. After all, you saw what none of us did." Emma stiffened. Gift, as if survival were magic, as if pain were talent. Her voice was measured. "I don't have a gift. I study, I notice, I prepare, that's all." Harrow's smile deepened. "Modest, admirable, but we believe you can do more, much more." Emma felt the trap in his words, the weight of expectations tightening like a noose. Wilson's eyes flicked toward her, heavy with something unspoken, regret, warning. Emma left the room with her mind in knots. The applause, the medals, the praise, it all felt like camouflage for something darker. She thought of the message on her phone. "They're testing you." That night she dreamed of the valley again. Smoke, gunfire, the ghost falling. Only this time, when she reached for her rifle, the trigger was gone. She was unarmed, exposed, and someone watched from the ridge above, faceless, silent. She woke drenched in sweat, the city's lights bleeding through the curtains. Her silver star lay on the nightstand, catching the glow. She stared at it for a long time, the metal cold, unfeeling. Was it honor, or was it a leash? The next morning, Wilson found her in the hotel lobby. His voice was low, urgent. "You're not safe here. Too many eyes, too many hands on your story. Get ready, Sullivan. The battlefield's moving, and this one's darker than anything you've faced." Emma looked at him, searching for truth. His eyes carried grief, guilt, warning. Her heart pounded as realization struck. She wasn't fighting the Taliban anymore. She wasn't fighting shadows in caves. Now she was fighting shadows in her own ranks. And this time they knew her name. Why did the ambush feel familiar, too familiar? The convoy wound through a narrow Afghan valley, jagged cliffs looming above, the road twisting like a trap. Emma sat behind the wheel of a Ranger-modified Humvee, helmet snug, rifle within reach. She wasn't the driver anymore. She was Sergeant Sullivan, sniper qualified, Ranger tabbed. But for this mission she had volunteered to drive. Maybe out of stubbornness, maybe out of defiance, or maybe because the steering wheel reminded her where it had all started. The radio buzzed with clipped updates, the rhythm of a mission in motion. Intel said they were hitting a weapons cache, lightly defended, routine if such a word existed here. But Emma's gut twisted. The silence in the mountains was wrong, too still. No shepherds, no goats, no movement at all. Her fingers tightened on the wheel. She whispered to herself, "This is bait." She wasn't the only one to feel it. In the second vehicle, Reeves's voice cracked over comms. "Eyes up, everyone, something stinks." The first explosion tore the world apart. A fireball erupted at the front of the convoy, flipping the lead MRAP like a toy. Shrapnel screamed, dust choked the air. Gunfire poured from the ridges above, AKs, PKMs, RPG streaks cutting the sky. The valley became a kill zone. Emma slammed the Humvee into reverse, skidding it sideways for cover. She grabbed her rifle, kicked open the door, and rolled behind the armored bulk. Bullets snapped against metal, ricochets whining like angry bees. She pressed her cheek to the dirt, breathing slow. Chaos around her, voices shouting, men screaming, the stench of burning fuel. She had seen this before, too many times. And just like before, it was too perfect. The positioning, the timing, the way the enemy struck exactly where the convoy was most vulnerable. Someone had told them. Rangers returned fire, muzzle flashes stabbing the smoke. Emma shouldered the M4, sighted high on the ridge, dropped a fighter mid-burst. Shifted, fired again, another silhouette collapsing into dust. Her earbud crackled with Reeves's voice, strained but steady. "Sullivan, Overwatch, get high ground." She didn't hesitate. Snatching the M24 from the back, she sprinted toward the slope. Bullets kicked dirt at her heels. She climbed, lungs burning, hands slipping on loose rock until she found a perch halfway up. She dropped prone, set the bipod, and scanned. Through thermal, enemy fighters glowed against the stone, 20, maybe more, firing down with calculated precision. She picked one, exhaled, squeezed. Target down. Another shifted to reload, down. The tide slowed. Rangers regrouped, rallying under her cover fire. But something gnawed at her. The fighters weren't panicked. They weren't scrambling like villagers pressed into service. They moved with discipline, with coordination. And then she saw him. A figure at the far ridge, taller, posture military, gesturing with precise commands. Not Taliban, not local. Someone trained, someone who knew their playbook. Her chest tightened, the mole's hand. She zeroed him, adjusted for wind distance. Breath in, hold. Just as she squeezed, he stepped back into cover. The round sparked harmlessly against rock. "Damn it," she hissed. Gunfire ripped back at her perch, rounds slamming into stone, dust exploding around her. She rolled, grabbed her rifle, shifted positions, heart pounding. Down below, Reeves's voice barked over comms. "Push forward, break the ambush." Emma's scope caught flashes, her team bounding, firing, advancing under fire. Brave, reckless, vulnerable. And then she saw it. A second RPG team setting up, aiming straight at Reeves's position. She had seconds, one breath, one chance. She squeezed, the gunner's chest burst crimson. The tube fell, the blast never came. Reeves's voice cracked in her ear. "Sullivan, you just saved my ass." She didn't answer. Her focus was locked on the ridge, where the shadow commander had reappeared, retreating with 2 guards. Her pulse hammered. Every instinct screamed. If he got away, the ambushes would continue. The mole's chain would remain hidden. She chambered, lined up, steadied. The shot felt possible, necessary. But then a child's cry pierced her headset, picked up from a ranger's hot mic. Somewhere in the chaos below, civilians had been caught in the crossfire. A woman wailing, a child screaming. Her chest seized. She had to choose. Commander or civilians, kill the threat or save the innocent. Her father's voice whispered, "Choose what matters." Emma cursed under her breath, swung her scope away, and fired. Not at the commander, at the fighters closing on the civilians. One dropped. Another. A mother scrambled, clutching a child, fleeing into cover. When Emma looked back, the commander was gone. Her throat burned with frustration. She had chosen life again, and lost the shadow. Hours later, the valley fell silent. The Rangers held the ground, the enemy scattered, bodies cooling under the Afghan sun. Medics worked on the wounded. Blackhawks thundered in for exfil. Emma sat on a rock, rifle across her lap, sweat and dust caked on her skin. Reeves approached, helmet under his arm, exhaustion in every line of his face. "You saw him, didn't you?" he asked quietly. Emma nodded. "Not Taliban, not local, someone trained, someone who knew exactly where we'd be." Reeves exhaled, eyes hard. "The mole again, feeding them our roots, our plans, and now he knows about you, that you almost had him." Emma's voice was raw. "I had the shot, I didn't take it." "Because of the civilians," Reeves said softly. "Not accusation, understanding." Emma looked away, jaw tight. "How many more will die because I let him go?" Reeves placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "That's not on you, that's on whoever's selling us out, and we'll find them." But Emma wasn't sure. She felt the weight of her restraint pressing heavy on her chest. She thought of the woman, the child, alive, safe, and the commander slipping back into shadow, free to strike again. As the Blackhawks lifted, carrying them away from the blood-soaked valley, Emma stared out at the endless mountains. Somewhere out there, a traitor's ally walked free. And she knew this truth. Next time he wouldn't just escape. Next time he'd come for her. Why did the silence feel sharper than gunfire? Emma Sullivan crouched in the ruins of an abandoned Afghan village, her breath slow, her rifle steady. Night wrapped around her like a shroud, broken only by the faint glow of starlight. The mission was supposed to be simple: overwatch for a Ranger raid on a suspected arms depot. But simplicity was a lie. She felt it, she always did. Reeves's voice came through comms. Movement east side, multiple hostiles. Emma adjusted her scope, scanning. Shadows flitted along the walls, disciplined, coordinated. Not villagers, not opportunists. These were soldiers, professional. Her chest tightened. It was happening again. Too perfect, too rehearsed. And then she saw him. The same figure from the ridge, taller, military posture, the one who had slipped her shot before. The Shadow Commander. Her finger brushed the trigger. Breath in, hold. A gun pressed cold and hard against the back of her skull. Her body went rigid. The world narrowed to that touch of steel. A voice whispered, calm, precise, "American, you won't take this shot, Sergeant." Her blood turned to ice. English, no accent, one of her own. The mole wasn't just feeding information. He was here. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The rifle remained trained on the ridge. Her mind raced. "Stand," the voice ordered. Emma rose slowly, hands slightly raised, the rifle dangling from its strap. The man stepped into her peripheral vision. Helmet, NVG's American kit. One of them. One of us. Her pulse hammered. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head, voice even. "The one cleaning up the mess. You weren't supposed to live in Helmand. You weren't supposed to be here at all. But you just don't know how to stay in your lane, do you?" Emma's jaw clenched. "You sold us out." "You call it betrayal," he said flatly. "I call it balance. We arm them, they bleed us, we bleed them. And the wheel keeps turning until people like you break it." Her chest ached, fury rising. 32 men in Helmand, the ghost, Falcon, the ambushes, all of it orchestrated with American hands behind the curtain. "You're not a soldier," Emma spat. He pressed the barrel harder into her head. "No, I'm a survivor, and so were you until now." For a moment silence held, then Emma breathed in, halfway held, and dropped. She twisted, slammed her shoulder into his gut, forcing the gun wide. The shot cracked into the dirt. She rolled, grabbed her sidearm, and fired. 2 rounds, center mass. The man staggered, NVG slipping, helmet clattering. He fell hard, blood spreading dark across the dust. His breath rattled shallow. Emma crouched over him, weapon trained, her chest heaving. His voice gurgled. "You think you changed anything? Someone else will take my place, always does." Emma's hands trembled, but her aim didn't falter. Her voice was steady, quiet. "Not tonight." She fired once more. Silence swallowed the ruins. Her earpiece crackled alive. "Sullivan, report, we heard shots." Emma closed her eyes, forcing her breath to steady. "Contact, neutralized, continue mission." Her voice sounded calm, detached, but inside she was breaking. By dawn, the arms depot was rubble, the mission deemed a success. But no one spoke of the man in American gear, his body buried in the dust. No one but Emma. Back at base, Reeves found her sitting alone, her rifle across her knees, her eyes hollow. He knelt, searching her face. "It was him, wasn't it? The mole." Emma nodded faintly. "Not Taliban, not foreign, one of ours." Reeves's jaw tightened. He didn't press for details. He just sat with her, silent, the weight of betrayal hanging heavy between them. Later in Wilson's office, the truth cracked wider. He listened as Emma recounted, her words clipped, her voice cold. When she finished, his face was ashen. "I warned you," he said finally. "The real war isn't out there. It's in here, in the shadows where loyalties rot and survival becomes currency." Emma's voice trembled, but she forced the words. "So what now?" Wilson leaned back, his eyes haunted. "Now you keep going, because if you stop, they win. and this machine will eat everything you love." She stood, saluted, and left. His words stayed with her. Weeks later, she sat alone in Montana, back in the woods where it had all begun. Her father's old rifle rested across her lap. The air smelled of pine and earth, quiet, honest. She thought of Helmand, of 32 enemies, of the ghost, of Falcon spared, of the civilians she chose to save, of the mole's blood pooling in the dirt. She thought of every choice, every line blurred, every cost paid. And she whispered into the trees, as if her father could still hear her. "They'll never see me as just a driver again, but I don't know if they'll ever see me as human either." The wind stirred, carrying her words into the silence. In the distance, a deer stepped into the clearing, pausing, watching her. Emma lowered the rifle. Not everything had to be a shot. Not everything had to end in blood. She let the deer pass. And in that moment she understood. Strength wasn't the medals. Strength wasn't the kills. Strength wasn't even survival. Strength was choosing what mattered, when it mattered most. She stood, slung the rifle, and walked back toward the fading light. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.